Thank you so much, Sharon. It's so exciting to be introduced by you. As they said, my name is Alyce, and I'm so very excited to be joining you this afternoon for Physical Disability Awareness Day, and I'd like to thank Physical Disability Australia for inviting me. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're zooming today, and I'm zooming in from the Gibel, the Jarowa, and the Western Waka Waka peoples, and I'd like to acknowledge that their sovereignty was never ceded. So today is a very special day because unlike many days for people with physical disabilities in Australia, this is one where we can really celebrate our achievements together, and I think also look at what we've accomplished over the last 12 months. And so I think this year we can say really honestly that despite it being some quite dark times and quite challenging times, I think we've come together more than ever and we're working towards positive change. It's quite touching listening to our speakers already, because I think universally, even though we're very proud, our journeys with having a physical disability can be quite challenging, and not for the reasons that able-bodied people think. I was born with a physical disability. Doctors think it's called central core disease. It's a rare genetic abnormality, and it causes lots of secondary issues too. So I have scoliosis, osteoporosis, and lung failure. And so many people would assume that it's my physical lack that makes my days challenging. But in fact, as everyone on this call knows, it's actually because our environment isn't and never has been accessible for us to live our life to the fullest. And so many things have happened to me that I think are mirrored in so many people's journeys, and some of it's amusing, but some of it is more serious. And so for me as a young person, it was all centered around rehabilitation, trying to make me walk, having a lot of unnecessary medical procedures, which is quite dramatic. And there was other things like when I went off to daycare, I actually got lost. So because I was so tiny, some kids had put me in a doll's pram and they left me there and I had to sleep. So, sometimes it's funny, and obviously I was found because I'm here. But then, as my journey progressed, it became quite serious things like I wasn't allowed to go to a normal school because we don't take kids like her. And that was only in 1990. So I think every step of my journey has been a fight towards just having that right to that same equality as anyone else. And so I'm greatly indebted to my parents who didn't accept no for an answer. They wanted me to have the same opportunity as everybody else. And so I think this is why days like today still really matter, because we live in a world that still excludes us from work opportunity, educational opportunities, even just being able to live in a home in the community. Everything is still a fight for us to have those basic, ordinary things that we want. So I've personally spent my adult life trying to challenge those narrow stereotypes that exist around physical disability, and we mustn't forget that visibility is so important still. I had lots of those kind of awkward 90s generation first, like being the first person to graduate from a high school with a HSC, or being able to graduate from a uni degree. But I tell everyone, rather than actually getting my degree being extraordinary, it was doing things like being the first person to use a skipping rope in acting class in a wheelchair. Sometimes I wonder why we do the things that we do, but I think rejection has been one of my greatest drivers. I was actually doing an education degree where I met wonderful Sharon Boyce, and she kind of took me under my wing and taught me how to be an advocate. And I'm just so grateful for that time, because I ended up leaving teaching because of ableism, taking up theatre, and then going out and doing lots of workshops. And so we did 11 years of workshops through the Darling Downs in schools, creating awareness around disability. And so that program actually reduced bullying through all peer groups by up to 50% is what schools reported. And so I think today we need to remember that education is actually still key to having acceptance of disability. Sadly, that program wound up at the end of the pandemic because, like for many of us, it wasn't safe for us to go into the community anymore. So I think probably the last and most radical things that I've done in the last few years is to actually have my daughter in 2018. I think like many of our community, probably many people in this room have experienced reproductive discrimination, and I was treated horrifically as a woman with a disability. Everybody focused on what if I had a daughter that was like me, instead of thinking about, what value she would bring as a person. And so I just told them that, what, is she going to be fabulous? To really kind of shut them down. And I think it's things like this that happen still is why days like today really matter. I do, before I wrap up, want to touch on the work that I'm doing at the moment for YWCA Australia with the wonderful Laura Skirt, who is our trivia hostess today. We do events for women and non-binary people with a disability around finding employment, and we've worked with major employers here in the Toowoomba region, including Clifford Guns and McDonald's, around being better employers of people with disabilities. And I have since joined the board of Our Fair Go as a director, and we're working on ending the sub-minimum wage here in Australia. Many elected reps have already joined, and the Council of Sydney has actually banned that from happening within their region. So I do like to have some fun. I am a brand ambassador of Little Party Dress and Colour My Wheels Australia. And because I obviously have no spare time, I am deeply involved in the Greens as well. And so as we look forward, I think this year we should think about our achievements and be very positive about the year that we've had. And it's so wonderful to see you all today. And I'm looking forward to what we achieve in 2025 and beyond. So thank you so much for having me.